So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Dapper Reacts number whatever the heck it is. I don't know. 112. Language families or whatever you want. Yes, I did in fact leave Vishanti's mic hot during the intro, and then I did in fact forget that the intro wasn't even on when I clicked over to the new scene. So let's take a couple Dappers of professional drinks right off the bat. I have a whiskey and cola, and it is indeed a Canadian whiskey. Wait, I already did the 2 for the drink counter, which means I didn't need to increment it, which means it's another Dappers a professional, but I get to increment it down this time. Guys, the show is starting out great.
Rip-roaring start here today, folks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, this is... Whew. Alright, so, Vishanti, how are you today?
Oh, man, well... I'm amused.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I'm also atop my mythical battle mount.
Yes, the giant Ashalot.
The kaiju-sized Ashalot.
Yeah. You know, we need to find out what, how to say giant Ashalot in Nahuatl. And that way we can just call it
I mean,
that.
I can pull out my reference text.
Well, that might be a, between shows thing, but it would be very cool to know.
Yeah.
Alright, so, guys, in case you're wondering, I'm also doing okay, I guess, except for, being completely incompetent. So that's great. But hey, we do have a super chat goal. So, Bent has had a fair bit of free pizza at the, as a result of the kindness and generosity of chat. But today, I thought, well, okay, to be fair, Vishanti thought, it was her idea, that maybe she could get in on the generosity of having a pizza. So, the deal is, if we can, during the next just under 2 hours, get 30 of the teal or higher super chats, then I will send Vishanti a pizza. And she will photograph that pizza so that I can put it on my community page, and that way you guys can see the pizza that I didn't lie. So, plus people, like pizza. It's,
That is true. It is very delicious.
Dark Claw Dragon, member for 31 months, and is at the Tetrapod level, says, AIG is a bag of danger noodles with a Godzilla. That they are. We'll take a drink. One-eyed danger noodles. Alright. So,
shout out, the people in Professor Dave's comment section this morning.
Yes,
I saw at least 2 people making reference to you. That's really cool.
I only saw the 1. My goodness.
People were talking about Trojan Source, and I credit that to you. Oh, look who it is, the guy who abandoned us.
Oh my goodness.
For Christian apologists.
Yeah, that was another thing we had to talk about, is the fact that Kip decided that what was more important than me or Vishanti, or, things like scholarship about linguistics, crazy interpretations of Genesis, none of that mattered. Instead, Kip was going to hang out at an apologetics conference in a building that looks like a concert hall, but is apparently a church. I don't know. But, yeah, so...
Vadim, my head.
Seriously. Vadim Radchenko for €2 says, no super chats because you don't have the JM Truth on. Would you want JM Truth on for this?
No.
I wouldn't. I will, however, use him as a joke.
I would also like to say that I, at least for a time, was immortalized on a t-shirt because of a prank that I pulled on JM Truth.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, your avian dinosaur cousin put out like a sorry, my brain is working at Kip speed today. So we were looking at one of JM Truth's live streams, and we were This is during the days of the Dumbfuck of the Year award. And we were just using it in acronym form, and I jumped into one of his live chats, and I said JM Truth for DFOTY. And of course, him not knowing it, but being an egotist, he goes, yes, JM Truth for DFOTY, and we screenshotted that and put it on a shirt.
Awesome.
And I own one of those t-shirts.
Oh, man. So in case you guys don't know, JM Truth, he used to be a fairly active Flat Earther guy. I think he's backed off being so active, although I think he's still a Flat Earther. And in addition to being a badly incompetent filmmaker and a Flat Earther, he was also just really bad at spelling. And so one day...
Writer of dinosaurs.
Yeah, okay, writer of dinosaurs. Okay. So, one day, he was working on a Flat Earth documentary with a partner. And, now to be fair, he does seem to be in the right in this situation that I'm about to describe. So, like, you know, justice for JM Truth, I suppose. But, one day, she decided she didn't like working with him. So she gathered up all of, like, the filming equipment and the van that they were using and just left. And so JM Truth took to, I think, Twitter to say, help, I've been abandoned. And it was one of the funnier things. Now, to be fair, it actually was a big deal and it wasn't okay. And she actually did steal a bunch of stuff that he'd paid for.
Thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, and just left him stranded in the middle of nowhere. So it's absolutely not okay what she did to him. Like, that's not okay. Don't do that. But it was also hilarious. So...
Okay, I just checked. Writer of Dinosaurs does not have that specific shirt up still in his store. However,
okay.
I am absolutely certain that he could be convinced to bring it back if people wanted it.
He should. Fate to Grey, Post-Diluvian Flying Space Glaciers says pizza for Vish, and then a resist fist with trans and the horns, and then a kaiju emoji here. We'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, hey, it is, it's not an easy time. Look, it's never been an easy time to be trans, right? But there's a concerted effort to make it worse. So please, you know, reach out to people who care about you and stay safe if you're out there and you're trans and you're in the former United States. It's a rough time. You know that. I don't need to tell you that. You're not dumb. I guess some trans people have to be dumb, right? Like, out of any group, some of them are going to be dumb.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who might be trans and dumb, this is dangerous. It's a dangerous time. Be careful. There you go. You know it now. I'm pretty sure, though, that most of the people who would be dumb are not the people who are watching my channel. I get the feeling that I attract the big brains out here. So, yeah. Anyway, let's take a look at what Bodie has been giving us. So lately, what we just went over with Kip last time, which was not last week, it was the week before that, because we took a little break from directly addressing this book. Bodie was going through and finding the names of either ethnic groups or locations, either as demonyms, that they, like, exonyms or endonyms, right? So whether or not the other people call them this or they call themselves this, and if they had some kind of vague phonetic similarity to the name of someone from, like, Genesis 10 or 11, then he was just like, well, that's who they come from Genesis 11. That's, like, Tuvalu, those are the sense of Tubal-Cain from Genesis. And not Tubal-Cain, just Tubal. And it's just like, Bodie, that's literally Roger from Mud Fossil U, just thinking that Alaska might be a scorpion tail because it has a little, like, curve bit on it. And, like, no. Little punk half dog, half canine who's been a member for 20 months sends, what was it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trans flags. Thank you very much. I can't cite and figure out 8 on my own. I need to count. I think my limit is about 6 for just by sight, figuring out the number. Yeah. Did you know that different people have different numbers that they can just look at and know how much that is? It actually varies.
Yeah.
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 And also, we've checked, and other animals can also determine how many of some items there are, up to a certain limit, and then they just get confused. I think dogs can actually go higher than most humans. before they get
Dang.
confused as to which one's more or less. Yeah. So, don't look, cognitive processes are a complicated thing, and there's way too much stuff involved to just say that this is smarter than that. It's one of the things about intelligence, right? Let's see. Fearmonger says, I'm surprised Bodhi doesn't think the Mongols are descendants from Cain, because Khan kind of sounds like Cain. I mean, I don't think we got to the Mongols yet, so he might think that. Like, that's still a possibility. Metageeky Platypus Warlock, who's been a member for 4 months, says, consider Benedict Arnold Jenner with a trans flag. Yeah, okay. That is a good example of a stupid trans person. Jeez. Okay. Y'all should just reject Caitlyn Jenner and just say that she doesn't count anymore.
I mean, she's such a terrible person.
Yeah. I would have been happier if all that I knew was that, hey, remember that person who was like a famous runner? And now her name's Caitlyn. And then I wouldn't have been like, okay. And then I could have just ignored that entire thing, like I always did ignore back when Caitlyn was Bruce. I never paid attention to Bruce Jenner. I didn't care. But
yeah, really.
Now I have to care because she's a freaking Quisling, which is just great. Ugh. Oh well. Also, you know what? Nope. I don't need to go into the fact that she uses her wealth and tries to establish that as some kind of why doesn't every trans person do, and then lists things like facial reconstructive surgery to feminize your face that she can only afford because of ridiculous amounts of wealth. We don't even have to get into that fully. All right, let's instead get into something else that's going to piss me off that isn't Caitlyn Jenner. We'll talk about Bodie, who I guess isn't a traitor to trans people, being not trans. He's just a normal transphobe, which I is that better or is that worse? I can't tell. Okay, here we go. This will be a poll.
I don't know.
This is a poll.
Okay.
All right. What's worse? And then the answers are going to be being a traitor to trans people. Trans people, one word or two words? Is trans people one word or two words?
I don't know. You could ask them in chat if they prefer.
Yeah. Although, I'm just going to write it as two words.
Okay.
All right, so which is worse, being a traitor to trans people or being a cis transphobe? There you go. That is the poll. Because I don't know which one's worse. Those are both really bad for slightly different reasons, and also for similar reasons.
I'm voting the second option because of structural and social power.
Okay.
Because if you're in a marginalized group and you're shitty to the marginalized group, but you don't have like systemic privilege, then that's not going to do as much damage as someone with privilege.
I can see that argument.
Yeah.
We have a super chat. This one is for $5 from Dutchman that's never saw snow tunicate, who says, one of my favorite examples of an animal with superior cognitive ability are chimpanzees who have vastly superior short-term memories to humans. Yeah. Have you ever seen they'll give chimpanzees a short-term memory task where they like highlight certain squares in a certain number and they flash for like a fraction of a second, and they'll do like 16 or 17 just on a grid. Certain squares light up, and the chimpanzee has to hit all of the squares in the exact right spot in the exact right order in order to get a treat, and they just do it like it's no big deal. And I'm sitting here like I forgot after like 4. And these chimpanzees are just like, whatever. You want me to memorize like 16 different flashing lights in sequence where each one is visible for 1/10 of a second? Easy. Where's my banana? Okay. Jeez. All right. Here we go. We got about to here last time. So, Vishanti, would you like to start us off, or should I?
You know what? Go for it.
Okay. Interestingly, one tribe that comes from Kush, according to Bodhi, obviously, is Seba or Saba. Perhaps it is the same Seba who gave rise to the Hindu Kush and the Ganjan Kush region of India. One region is in the northeast area of India. Ganjan even retains a river named Ganga, which was formerly known as Ethiopia, or more properly, Kush. Okay, so Bodie is trying to. This is once again, he found a river that kind of sounds like Ethiopia. Well, the old version of the name kind of sounded like Ethiopia. And then he's going to connect that to the Ethiopia in English. No, sorry, not in English. In Africa, I can talk. I know what words are. For no other reason than that there's a similarity of sound. And then, because the old name for Ethiopia is Kush, he's going to bring that back to the Bible for the Ethiopians. I just... Okay, first I'm going to take a drink. Okay. We're going to read a few super chats, membership chats, and then we're going to talk about some of that.
Right.
Okay, so Ben Tunicate, who's been a member for 23 months, says, Dapper, vibrating heart, and then some disgusting, vile, horrifying pelagic tunicates, which I don't even know
Look
why
at
that's
how
an
pretty
emoji.
and beautiful and majestic.
If you think that's pretty
Serene.
and beautiful and majestic, I have some pages on Adam and Eve to show you.
I mean, I also have pages on Adam and Eve. I come from a very, very text-rich tradition, so I'll just add those to the collection.
AdamandEve.com. Not Genesis. Sorry about the miscommunication there. Which is not about the Bible, in case you're wondering what that is.
It's definitely not.
No. Tad for $5 says, I think they're equally bad for different reasons. All right, I mean, that's fair. I probably should have included they're equally bad as an option, and I apologize for not having done so. Because I think that's a valid point. That they might not be easily distinguishable. But then Ben Thick Tunicate has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. Let's take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can taste the maple syrup, because that's how I assume Canadian whiskey is made. Actually, what would happen if you diluted maple syrup to the point where you could like make a mash out of it and like ferment it and then you distilled it? What would that taste like? Hey, any Canadians in the chat? See what you can do about finding out how to get me distilled maple syrup. That would be fascinating. Yeah. I want to try that. And then Goop23 for $5 says, Saba, like from Power Rangers? I actually don't know what the etymology of Saba, the sentient talking weapon of the White Ranger from season 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't know what that is. Like I don't even know what the Japanese term for that guy was from Die Ranger. I don't know. Maybe. And I mean, with Bodhi's logic, it's absolutely the same thing, and that makes the Japanese actually also descended from Mizraim and Kush and all that. That because the Americans made a Japanese weapon in a TV show named Saba, which is connected to Kush here, which means the Japanese must also be descended from Kush. So there you go. Pillowpunk points out you wouldn't have to dilute it if you use raw sap instead of syrup. Okay, but are there things in the raw sap that get boiled off when you're making the syrup that I wouldn't want as a flavoring? Because I've had raw maple sap, and while it does taste a bit like maple syrup, I remember there being like other like herbal flavors that I wasn't used to tasting in maple syrup, and I feel like those boil off. So I don't want just, fermented maple sap. I want fermented maple, like just the stuff that's normally in maple syrup. But then again, I don't know. Kip is tempted not to like this stream. Kip, you're the one who abandoned us.
Yep.
Oh, you think Saba is from Saban? Well, Haim Saban was Jewish, so maybe that puts the Japanese firmly in the Shem descendants camp. Because Bodhi would definitely say that, the Jewish people are descended from Shem. So, maybe that's the connection. Saba is named for Haim Saban. Haim Saban was Jewish, therefore the Japanese are Jewish. So, there you go. Don't ask why they eat pork. Not important. Okay. Now, hey, Shanti, now you know. You should just go to Japan because they're all Jews there. It's a whole thing, according to Bodhi's logic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
You'll feel right at home. Plus they eat a lot of rice, so all that Passover no leaven stuff. It'll be easy.
Yeah.
Barely
They're just
anything
following.
there.
Yeah, they're just following Sephardi minhag.
Exactly. Or is it actually Japanese minhag, which is very different from all the others, which goes to explain why Japanese culture looks nothing like any Jewish culture. Can the Japanese time travel? Yeah, I've seen so many movies where the Japanese time travel. Come on, there's even a Godzilla movie where a main plot point is that the Japanese figure out how to time travel. Vandalia 1998. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say that I saw a creationist one time talking about how ancient Shinto is a branch of like the lost tribes or something, because Shinto practitioners carry around like a type of box on rods, and it reminded them of the Ark of the Covenant.
You heard it here,
they
guys.
Have a procession with their priests and carrying around like a box with like carrying rods. It was just wow.
Any culture that ever uses anything that even vaguely resembles a palanquin, now Jewish. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like every culture, basically. Because it turns out suspending something between two wooden rods is a really handy way to get like between 2 and 4 people to carry a single load.
Uh-huh.
Vandalia 1998 is a member now at the amnio level. Welcome back, Vandalia. All right. Logically, the farther away from Babel people traveled, the more likely descendants were to pick up the torch and continue moving and filling the earth as per Genesis 9:1. I'm not entirely sure that makes any sense, but whatever, I don't really care. Certain descendants of Noah, perhaps those listed in Genesis 10, would travel only so far, but their descendants were the ones to pick up their tents and keep moving. I mean, if all you're saying is that in terms of human migration, people move a certain distance and then settle down, and it's their descendants that continue on farther in that direction, then, like, yeah, I guess.
Sure, I guess. I mean...
Robert Esses says 40 Creek whiskey make a maple liqueur. Oh. Robert, you should send me a link to that so that I can figure out if I can get that.
Yummy.
Because you know what? I might want to take some of this Canadian whiskey I have, pour in a little bit of maple liqueur, a little bit of lime or lemon juice, and then top it off with maybe some club soda.
Oh.
I know, doesn't that sound nice?
Very nice.
Yeah.
So
my Quebecois ancestry through my human adoptive family will be very proud. Yeah. Yeah. Tad, who's been a member for 1 month, says, we're all Jews now. Mazel tov, everyone. Yeah, if you can find any kind of linguistic connection, there you go. That's all it takes. Don't check in with any rabbis about that.
Yeah, definitely don't.
Mm-mm. Okay, so some names that do not appear in the Babel account become harder to trace back unless they were written down and documented, which many American and Australian tribes did not do. Bodie, my guy. You can't just make the claim that they sound alike. And here's part of the reason, right? So if we're going to claim that, like, northeastern India was settled by Ethiopians, right? We know the kind of languages that are spoken anciently in Ethiopia. We're getting things like Ge'ez, Tigrinya, things like that, right?
And
you know what Ge'ez and Tigrinya have in common? They're Semitic languages.
I was going to say they're definitely not Indo-European languages. Yeah,
they are together. They form a little like subgrouping of Western Semitic or Southwestern Semitic languages, if I remember correctly. So the languages spoken in like Eastern and Northeastern and India are primarily Dravidian. And there is no observable connection between Dravidian languages and Semitic languages. There just isn't. So if Bodie wants to say that that's actually what happened, is that the descendants of the Semitic-speaking peoples of Ethiopia managed to get all the way to Eastern India, he's got his work cut out for him if he's going to try to say that linguistics is the reason for this. You're going to have to make some kind of connection between these very loosely connected, or not connected at all, language families, right? Good luck with your Dravido Afro-Asiatic language family, Bodie. But you haven't tried anything yet. Have you considered yes he can? I had not considered that, Jillian Mixmaster Jeans Ren. Okay, we have a couple super chats. Vandalia 1998 for $5 says the White Ranger in the Sentai equivalent MMPR season 2, just like Justin from Turbo, a kid ranger who got bigger when he morphed. Yes, he was. He was also super creepy with all the female rangers. Because Japan, man. Why not have the 8-year-old kid go around being really creepy with the female rangers? Man,
Also,
Japan is a weird
this
place.
is completely unrelated to this particular tangent, but I managed to cobble together a very clunky...
Dream to Mothra.
Oh, hey, Mothra! I composed a very clunky way to say that I am atop my gigantic ocelot. But I did it in Nahuatl.
Very nice. You should say it, because you'll do better than I will.
Ipanowei ocelot.
Nice. Nice. Right-handed Siths, who's been a member for 26 months and is at the amulet level, says, Dapper needs more rice with a Ghidorah. So I will give you an update on the rice situation. I currently have approximately 20 pounds of dry rice.
Yummy.
So, currently so in case anyone doesn't know, I have received probably well over 200 pounds of dried rice from my wish list over time. At one point, it became a bit of a storage problem where I didn't actually have a place to put all the bags of dried rice. And currently, I still have the rice on my wish list over on Amazon, and it says that if the priority is on low, you probably shouldn't get me any rice. So the priority will probably go from low to normal sometime in the next few months. Because once I'm well into the next bag, which is the last bag I have, I'll switch it. And if you want to get me more rice at that point, you're welcome to. However, you're always welcome to get me any of the other things that are on there. There's plenty on there. I even have a blanket. Because you know what? Sometimes it gets cold out here. Not often, but sometimes. And it's nice to have a blanket. So yeah, there's a blanket, there's a GM screen, there's tea, there's sausage, there's comic books, there's TTRPG books, almonds, noodles.
You said that you had 20 pounds of rice?
I have about a third left of one 15-pound bag and another 15-pound bag.
I was gonna say that's around 4 to 6 weeks of rice supply for me.
I mean, it depends on how
I eat a lot of rice.
Well, yeah, you do eat a lot. Yeah. You probably eat more rice than I do. So there you go. Let's see. Demon Trigger with their first super chat on the channel. Thank you very much for $5 says, greetings from the neighboring Mojave Desert. We don't have cool cacti near me, but we do have Joshua trees, a type of yucca plant named by Mormons. And I love Joshua trees. I gotta say, they are awesome.
They are very cool.
And it is also, if you ever watched the movie The Hebrew Hammer, it's also amusing that there are a lot of Joshua trees when they're in the Negev desert over in Israel. And it's like, get a lot of Joshua trees for Israel, but okay. And I'm sorry, that bit always takes me out of the movie just a little bit. When Sacha Baron Cohen and Judy Greer are racing through the desert in Israel, and it's just full of Joshua trees. Oh well. All right. Oh, okay. Language family correlations. This is the good bit. Vishan, do you want me to keep going, or you want to pick up?
Let me take a sip of coffee and I'll do it.
Okay. Coffee is one of the major food groups, and it also can help you awaken from some kind of weird psychic stupor. Just ask Agent Cooper. Special Agent Cooper, I'm sorry. Didn't mean Special Agent Cooper.
Okay. Language family correlations.
Oh, good.
Whew. A second factor is based on language families, of course. Due to wars and migrations of people, languages often intermingle with other families. For example, because of Roman occupation, the Latin language infiltrated many areas. And so, Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese, French, and modern-day Italian all belong to the same language family. These are called Romance languages. Even English has extensive Latin influence.
Technically, nothing
I'm
there was wrong.
I'm gonna take a drink, because that's actually not wrong.
Yeah, he got that right. And those languages did replace earlier non-Italic languages, like Celtic and Germanic languages. Like, for instance, pre-Roman Iberia, pretty much all
Yep.
Celtic languages.
Yep.
So, you know.
And I'm very pleased to see that Romanian's second in the list there, and not just thrown in at the end when people go, "Oh yeah."
Yeah,
So-
although I would appreciate though if we could get like Romansh, Catalan, Occitan, some of the lesser known ones. But you know what? Most people can't name those, so I'll give Bodie a pass on that because his target audience is not going to know what Romansh is.
Yeah, and they'll probably think that Occitan, or depending on what your
Yeah.
Occitan, depending on your pronunciation, they're probably thinking, "Oh, that's like the luxury brand." Like,
High-end Romance language right there. You got to pay more to learn that one.
yeah, it's a high-end Romance language, very
rich,
like regionally bespoke. Yeah,
rich Corinthian leather in the vocabulary.
that's yes. Oh my god, I'm having a Patrick Bateman moment where he's talking about like the business cards, and he's just
Ooh,
that's us with Occitan.
that thick stock, the raised
Yeah.
lettering, and he just gives that like
Bone.
ooh face. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's if you haven't seen American
So
Psycho,
good.
it's a fun movie.
I've read the book, and while it is certainly one of the books of all time, I have to say that the choice to have a woman direct the movie adaptation was the correct one.
I haven't read the book,
because
so I wouldn't know.
Lots of misogyny and graphic descriptions of sexual violence.
I mean, given who the
and
POV
it's
character is, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, yeah, but it's also like not as clear that it's all in his head or that he's just like an unreliable narrator. Whereas in the movie, you pick that up fairly like early, and if you're for whatever reason still not getting it, the ATM going like, "Give me a kitten," like, yeah.
All right, what do we get about nations well beyond Rome's grasp?
Nations well beyond Rome's grasp. Well, that's insulting to Rome. In India, which wasn't beyond Rome's grasp, a whole host of languages and a number of language families exist.
Yup. I mean...
Okay, well, I mean... you know what? I'm gonna let him have it.
Okay.
I'm gonna let him have it. Which is a strong indication that numerous descendants from Babel likely ended up in that area. No, that's not what that means. This makes sense. No, it doesn't. Considering the geography funnels people toward India on their way to Asia, the Silk Road would like a word. Australia, it's on their way to Asia, Australia, or the Americas. No, the Silk Road would like a word. It is simply an easier route than crossing mountains. Of course, a far northern route through Russia, Siberia could have been taken, which is possible, but the Ice Age may have made migration more difficult and dangerous. Bro, the Silk Road exists!
Also, is he just going to ignore the fact that genetically the people in Siberia are the closest to the majority of North American people groups? Like, we're just going to ignore the genetics there? Like, who cares?
I literally have the same, like, haplogroup. I mean, I did my DNA. It's like the A haplogroup or whatever, and it came from, like, northeastern, Siberia, and then parts of Southeast Asia, and then it crossed the land bridge, and it's like, you can see it all in the Americas, so...
If you just look at the haplogroups for, like, mitochondria and Y chromosome, you can mostly trace the ancient migrations of humans. It's not that hard to do, and it does not match on...
We didn't just make this up.
Yeah, it does not match on to Bodhi's story here. I'm sorry,
nope,
but...
not even a little.
Pacific Islanders are just not closer related to the Ethiopians. They're just not.
Oh, this is painful. Also, yeah, Gillian Wren is saying misogyny in a Bret Easton Ellis novel? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I will say, I did enjoy a good, chunk of it, because in the movie, you get, these little tangents about Whitney Houston or Genesis or, Huey Lewis, but in the book, they're entire chapters long. There's just a chapter called Genesis, and he talks about the band Genesis for an entire chapter. It's pretty entertaining, but yeah.
Also, I'm gonna say we're coming up on about a quarter of the way through. We've got 7 out of 30, and remember, if we don't get to the 30 super chats to get Vishanti pizza, she just doesn't eat this week.
Yep. Sorry, I'll starve.
Yeah. And she's very high metabolism. If she doesn't get that pizza, she might actually just waste away.
Yeah, I mean, people, you've seen me, like, you've seen photos of me. I am very high metabolism. But yeah, I'm really mad about this whole thing, like, oh, it just funnels people into India. I'm like, bro, literally all of modern day Iran, ancient Persia, it's mountains, just everywhere. Freaking mountains. Which is why the Silk Road goes above all that. Like, it's on the north side of that.
Right,
and you know what's even further? Just slightly further north of the Silk Road? A bunch of grassy plains.
Yep. Also, we are ending the poll, and let's see what happens. Now, this is a little bit skewed, because like I said, I should have included a third option where they're both equally bad. But with the two options I used, what's worse? Being a traitor to trans people, 60%. Being a cis transphobe, 40%. So, it looks like, at least for the part of my audience that is regularly here for Dapper Reacts, it is worse to be a traitor to trans people. So, there you go. Claude Simeon for $5 says, for love of soapboxes, wave.
Yes.
We do have a few... This is a very soapboxy show, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. I feel like that's one of the reasons why people come, is to hear our takes on things like what I want to do with some Canadian whiskey and maple liqueur, or, you know...
Yeah.
For Vishanti to go on about, like, a murder book. Crime book? Horror book?
Ancient trade routes.
Ancient trade routes, yeah. So, Goop23 for $5 says, Vishanti, we're spending an entire chapter talking about Genesis. That's true. Metageek Platypus Warlock for $5 says, Bodie is as much an expert in genetics as in linguistics. Correct. Also, water is wet, maple syrup is sticky, Kip is absent, Vishanti rules, etc. Trans brag flag. You know what? I disagree with none of these things. All of these are accurate. Thank you very much.
All of that is accurate, yeah. All based in fact.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She seems to have an invisible touch, genetic syndrome, and slowly does you apart. Thank you, Jessica Bell.
Careful, I don't want to get a copyright strike.
Becca Justiniano says Macy Cat is happy to be hearing more from me this week. Please soapbox away. So, hey, Macy Cat.
Well, it's easier when Kip isn't here to monopolize the chat.
I mean, I could do that even when he's here, but it's rude.
Well, it's rude to abandon us. So I'm just saying.
Okay, of course, a far northern north of Russia, Siberia, blah, 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 blah. Okay. With regard to native North Americans, a handful of language families seem to dominate, and this can give us clues. A language family consists of a number of languages that are all similar and have a common origin.
You've already told us that.
Ultimately dating back to Babel. No.
No, but he's
of course,
already...
languages are always changing, and this makes things different. Like, no!
Well, I mean, it does...
No!
To be fair, this part, in terms of identifying language family, is true. That's why it's, you know, a big thing that linguists do, is try to figure out family relationships between languages. What is...
Yeah, but you can't, like, trace all languages back to Babel.
What is... Well, no, you absolutely can't. But what is this? North America 9 to the 10th? South America 6 to the 11th?
Okay, these are footnotes. All right, so dominant indigenous language families. He says that North America has 9 indigenous language families. Right, go ahead and scroll down. I want to see what his reference is. Native American languages, Indian University.
All right, that's okay. That seems like a reasonable.
All right, because I mean, if he's talking about like Uto-Aztecan and then like, okay, sure, maybe that's where he's going with that. But
South America 6, according to language maps.
Freelang.net.
I'm not going to say it's like just completely terrible, but like I would prefer an actual scholarly source. And also, Prehistory of Australia from a 1975 source. Bodie, there has got to be something from this century that you can pull from to figure out how many language families there are in Australia. Aside from ones that came over with colonization.
Okay, Australia. 1 to the 12th.
Yeah, I'm just going to prefer that these are just actually just the whole number. North America has 9 to the 10th language families for some reason. Just a huge number. Very, very linguistically diverse. Of course, Australia with 1 to the 12th, that's still just 1. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just writing the number 1 with extra steps.
Jessica Bell asked, is the A in Babel pronounced as a soft A or a hard A?
Well, I'm not sure which one is a hard A or a short or a
hard
A
or a soft A. I would say long or short might be the slightly better description, but it depends on what language you're speaking natively. Because if you're reading it in Hebrew, it's Bavel. If you're in Anglophone locations, you're as likely to get Babel as you are Babel, which I hate, but whatever.
You do hate that, and I'm not entirely sure why.
I do. I hate it a lot.
Okay. All right, well, I guess it's a...
I hate it a lot.
We got some bold text, so it's me now. Of course, there are many others, but none that take up a significant portion of the respective continents. Okay. In the far north of Australia, there are several where people made small settlements, likely from Indonesia, New Guinea, and other coastal peoples. I'm not going to contest that. But the bulk of Australia and the Aborigines, which, by the way, is, in Australia at least, generally considered a bit of a slur. So, But then again, I find that is not widely known in the Anglosphere outside of Australia, so I'm not going to give Bodie too much crap about that.
Today I learned.
Yeah. Well, exactly, right? I've been told that by numerous Australians, but like I've never heard anyone outside of Australia realizing that just without having been recently informed.
What do they prefer as a term?
Don't know specifically, and so I would have to look that up if I were to write about like native Australians. Native Australians might just be it, right?
Yeah, if any native Australians are in the chat, let us know.
Which is unlikely. I'm pretty sure it's a weird time of day over there.
I mean, there's insomniacs in Australia.
It's true. It's true. There are. Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Jewish historian. It says counterpoint. It says for $5, counterpoint. The antiquity of the Jews. Yes. Oh, those Jews, they're so old. They're all geriatric. Every single one of them. Alright. Inland to Tasmania spoke variants of one language family that is unique from all others. And that's 13. Oh, okay, that's just the same 1975 book. If this language or people could be tied to a descendant in Genesis 10, then a possible lineage could be made. Yeah, that's a big if, Bodie. Can you do that? Have you actually tried to make the connection? My Infinite Journey for $2.22 says, Hail Nero, Daps, Vish, and hail being abandoned. Thank you very much. I'm glad that enough of my community actually remembers the whole abandoned thing, that it actually works.
It's so good.
Oh, yeah. Look, JM Truth was always a hilarious individual. I think to this day, my favorite thing was when there was like an infiltrator into his Discord that told him that there was a 22-second like discrepancy.
Oh my god!
Between the boost back
legendary
of the booster from SpaceX. So like Res Rhetoric and SpaceX both released footage of this launch and boost back that was testing their first stage boosters. And someone had like infiltrated JM Truth's server specifically to feed him misinformation to see if he would check. And it's not like it was misinformation that he couldn't have checked on, right? It was extremely
easy. He just took it
easy.
Unquestionably.
Right. All you had to do was just, hey, JM, did you watch the videos back like next to each other? No, he didn't. And so he's like, oh yeah, there's like a 22-second discrepancy between Red's Rhetoric's footage and the SpaceX footage. And so then JM went on Craig McNeil's channel and just repeated that. And so then they all three of them sat there and watched the synced up footage, and it was like frame for frame perfect match. And it was like, hey, where's the 20 seconds, JM?
Listening to him cope live was incredible.
Yeah, there's... Oh boy. That was a wonderful day. My Unfinished Sock for $2 says, don't abandon your peers, like and share the stream. Oh, that's amazing. Don't abandon your peers. That it's true. Please don't abandon us. Alright. If this language could be tied, let's see. Recent genetic testing by Indian scientists has placed a possible tie to India after leaving Africa before settling in Australia. Bodie, I just love that he just glosses over the fact that that's strong support for the out of Africa theory, which he rejects.
Right.
But okay. The most likely candidates are Kush or Put, both having extensive coasts in their territories. The language family of Aboriginal... Okay. So here's... The natives of Australia are in fact not more closely related to any current, like, African group than the other members of like Indonesia and Southeast Asia. So probably not. The language family of the Aborigines is not like the language family of the Puttites or Moors.
Uh,
So the better connection may be Cush and one of his sons. Okay, but Bodhi, where's your actual linguistic analysis? What are the cognates that you're proposing between these
these are just
Aboriginal languages?
speculations, man.
But that's the thing. If you want to speculate, okay, sure. But if you want to actually say that this is your real hypothesis, you have to give me something, right? Like,
Jillian found the answer to the Indigenous Australians question.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Well, nice.
I guess it's Indigenous Australians.
Also, I have to laugh that he's talking about Kush having an extensive coast in their territories. Like, yeah, sure, anciently, but Eritrea's entered the chat.
Yeah, sorry, Ethiopia. You don't get a coastline.
You don't get a coastline.
Instead, we're going to have the most militarized dictatorship on the entire planet.
Jeez.
In case you guys don't know, the average citizen of Eritrea is in the military until they retire or die. And basically all functions in that society are directed by the military. There are military-owned grocery stores to go buy your food from your military pay.
What if a company town were just a military state?
Yeah, for just the entire country. But also a whole bunch of them had guns.
Yeah. Jillian says the preference is to use First Nations people,
Okay.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, or Indigenous Australians, according to the Aussie government.
All right. I will try to remember that, and I will almost certainly screw it up at some point, and that is...
In my brain, I will connect it to the fact that Canada refers to its Indigenous people as First Nations, so I can go, oh, there's more than one.
Which we did when talking about some First Nations people on this show. I went with First Nations Young Earth Creationism. Because there was a TV channel / YouTube channel run by some First Nations group that were doing some Young Earth Creationist stuff. But also some stuff I gave a lot of props to. Like getting like original lyrics to songs written in their native tongue, which is important for linguistics preservation as well as the propagation of the language into the future. So like, I don't like your Young Earth Creationism. However, your language preservation stuff is absolutely great. Anyway, so I want to talk about what it actually, like, how linguists go about connecting language families, right? So one of the first things you want to look for are what are called cognates. Now, if you've learned a language, you probably remember cognates as being words that both sound alike and have similar meanings in different languages, right? So, like, what's a good Spanish cognate, Ashanti?
Or an English word?
Yeah.
Avocado.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, those are very similar words in English and Spanish. Now, the thing is, though, it's actually technically not a cognate in English in the linguistic sense. The reason for this is
true.
Cognates actually have... Oh, drink for Mothra again. Mothra's back. So the reason for that is that linguistically what you want to find is two words that are similar as a result of direct descent through the splitting of different languages as time goes forward, right? In the case of avocado, that's actually just a direct borrowing from Spanish into English. And even in Spanish, I think it was a borrowing from one of the native languages in like Central America. So like it double extra doesn't count in terms of linguistics.
It's a Nahuatl word.
Yeah.
Aguacat.
So, another example, though, might be the English word hound and the German word Hund. So in German, Hund just means dog. And in English, hound is a subset of dogs. So there's a difference of meaning, but they also both clearly descend from the same like Proto-Germanic word.
There's also father and padre.
Yeah, that's
both come from.
That's true. Those both come from the same Proto-Indo-European word.
Yeah, and Team ONB in the chat reminded me. So there's father in English, vadre, and pater.
Yep.
All of those are related. So.
Also, pater in Greek is also related. Yep. All those are connected. And so then what you do is when you find some, and you're initially going to have candidate cognates, right? Because you don't have enough information to determine that these are definitely cognates. So The next thing you want to do is see if you can come up with a reasonable set of sound changes that could result in all of these words converging onto the same original word. And if you can do that multiple times for a large swath of the vocabulary of this language, especially the what's sort of called like the basic vocabulary, words for like family members, everyday activities, common animals, things like that. More like esoteric concepts, like things that you might hear in like academia or philosophy or theology and stuff. Those often have a lot of borrowing, so those tend not to be the words that are the most illuminating in this terms. One of the things you can see is like the Swahili word for book is kitab. That's not a native Swahili word. That's just literally a borrowing from Arabic kitab, which means book, right? But it does mean that kitab is a cognate with a lot of other words in languages like Hebrew, where the root is KTV. So you get words like
Katav,
katav.
Katuv.
Right.
Yep.
So that's a connection there. And so once you have your hypothesis, the hypothesis is these languages are related to a proto-language according to this tree that you're going to draw via these sound changes. Then what you want to do is see if you can predict the form of other words in those languages based on a small subset having this word as their cognate. So then you want to bring it back to the proto-language. Then you can move it forward in time through your sound changes to another language and see if you can find that form attested as the cognate. And if you can actually do this reliably, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because nothing is ever perfect. But if you can do this fairly reliably, now you have a good idea. You can also do similar things for like language or for like grammar, right? Like Proto-Indo-European languages tend to have masculine, feminine, and neuter genders. And the ones that don't, you can usually find earlier stages where they lost one of those or combined two of them. And you can even usually find remnants of that in the pattern of which words end up in which gender. You can do the same thing for like what grammatical categories do they encode versus leave as like items to be as ideas to be expressed lexically as opposed to grammatically, right? So like this language family is characteristically a language family that encodes volition into the form of the verb. Okay, that can be another key. Another one is like which noun cases are typical. So in Indo-European languages, there are typically 5 to 7 core noun cases, right? So you're going to get nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, and then sometimes you're going to get things like vocative, ablative, locative. So get a few extra ones here and there. But like those core of nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, those are going to be some like really cross-linguistically common ones in the language family. So you do all that stuff, and now you have something you can publish in the linguistics literature to say, hey, here's my proposal for, Dravido-Afroasiatic as a unified language family. Vishanti, has Bodhi done any of that?
No.
Okay. Prostetnik Volgon Jeltz, who's been a member for 2 months, and is at the tetrapod level, says AIG is a barrel of broken bacula. Ouch. I can't do that. Must hurt so much. Man, can you imagine having a broken baculum? Oof.
Ugh.
Yeah. Humans out there, be thankful that is not a part of human anatomy, because holy crap, I can't. What do you? Can you put a cast on that? What do you do?
No.
Yeah.
Hey, Dapper, here's a tangent for later, like maybe
Hmm?
a different stream. Why is it that dudes don't have like very good handwriting?
I think it's mostly they just don't care that much. Because like here's the thing, right? I don't have great handwriting, but I can do calligraphy, and I'm actually not that bad at it. And it's because
That's different. That's a different skill. That's drawing letters. That's not
let
handwriting.
me explain. I think it's because I care on the one hand, and on the other hand, I just need me to be able to read it, and that's it.
Mm.
And like I don't practice my handwriting outside of like calligraphy. So for me, it's just like if I can read it, it's good enough. Whereas I've seen women and girls sit there and practice their handwriting. I've never done that, and that's just because I don't care. Let's see. Triceratops is malleable, sick like a mallet. Member for 13 months, and is at the emulate level and says "Roar" with a Godzilla, a Mothra, and another Godzilla, and we will take a drink for that. Thank you very much. I like that sick is the little thing for like this is how it was originally written because it's just Latin for thus. It's like
yeah, just hey, this was their mistake, not mine.
And yet literally it's just the Latin word for thus, like as in it was written thusly. Most ended up in Africa or Arabia initially. Nimrod remained in Babylonia. Sounds like something you would put between sandwich slices of bread. You know, I want to have a Babylonia sandwich. And went into Ashur, Assyria per Genesis 10. One group of Kushites did manage to move east to found the Hindu Kush. Again, Bodie, you're going to actually have to do more than just say this word and this word are similar sounding. You have to actually do the work, Bodie. And then moved on to the Ganges River area. They were possibly even among the first tribes of the Malay people in Malaysia. Jeez. Bodie.
In the chat, Tad says, I'm a dude, I have terrible handwriting because I switched schools in 3rd grade and was forced to learn cursive over a weekend, so it broke both printing and cursive for me. Tillison says, I think it's similar with journaling when I made a to-do list or journal. It was super basic, but other people's journals look like works of art. I was just gonna say, like, I've noticed that in school, girls tend to have, like, those wide, bubbly form letters. My handwriting was never bubbly like that. It still isn't. It's jagged and squished and only halfway intelligible even to myself.
This means Vishanti has man handwriting.
I mean, I kind of do.
Team ONB Formula 1 dog racing, in what might be the most horrific thing I've read in chat, says, I have had a eggplant fracture. It didn't hurt, but the popping sound was traumatic. Oh, that's a sound I never want to hear. If I go my entire life without ever hearing that particular popping sound, that'll be fine by me.
No. Ooh. Yeah, Tolson, elegant handwriting would probably get boys bullied, which I think is really just unfair because handwriting looks great. Like, good handwriting looks great. It should be an all people thing.
I mean, there's a lot of things that I think should be all people thing that are weirdly gendered, like knowing how to cook. Like for some reason,
it's also bizarre. If you say, "Hey, who's a famous chef?" You'll start naming like male chefs.
Yeah. Well,
but
it's a weird thing. Cooking, is women's work. Being a chef, though, that's for men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you realize that those are just weird parts of a continuum, right?
Yeah. Or it's like singing. It's considered like feminine, but like the most famous bands in the world have male singers, so it's like, what?
Well, a lot of them do, at least.
Yeah, but handwriting shouldn't be gendered. I agree with Pibblepunk on this one.
Yeah.
It's so ironic, though, because for a very long time in history, only males were really trained to be scribes. So,
yeah.
God, it's so weird. Why are gender roles are dumb?
Well, the thing is,
gendered things are dumb.
They evolve out of very complex things, and it's very hard to usually tie them down to one like cause. But yeah, they're generally arbitrary. Ultimately, Metageeky Platypus Warlock for $5 says this convo has this medical librarian reading medical papers on topics she never normally would. Nice. Glad to be trans and free of those concerns with the Mothra.
Hey.
Awesome. Let me update the counter because
Oh yeah, all of the the engineers and the architects and stuff talking about how their handwriting changed. Like, yeah.
Now, here's one thing. No matter what your gender is, if you're a doctor, your handwriting is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That is not gendered. That is just professional thing. All right, so here's the thing. We are going to take a quick break. I'm going to go refresh my drink a little bit. We will be back in just a few minutes. And remember, we are just behind the pace where Vishanti will get free pizza. And it's possible, although not currently very likely, that we could get me buying pizza for both Vishanti and Bent.
Hey!
So you could turn me into like Pizza Claus if you wanted to. It's like Santa Claus, but for pizza. And on March 8th instead of December 24th/5th, depending on how you're counting the days. So, anyway, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Thank you very much, everybody. A couple of super chats to read. Heather Bodacious claims Coon for $5 says, "My mom is a retired medical doctor, and her handwriting is very legible." Oh, impressive. My dad, who was never a clinician, not so much. Well, there are always exceptions to every rule. Olivia Williams, for $2 says, to help Vishanti get her pizza with a Ghidorah, unfortunately, $2 does not actually hit the teal tier that increments the counter. And we're currently at 13 out of 30. But we do drink for it. Which means we are also 17 super chats away from Vishanti getting a pizza,
Woohoo!
which she can redeem any point in the next few days, right? So,
Woohoo!
yeah. So that she doesn't starve.
Yeah, I would like to not starve.
So I'll give a quick version of my after the break thing. Guys, this channel is almost entirely supported directly through things like your gifts of super chats, super thanks, your memberships, the Patreon. I have a Patreon linked in the description. I believe Vishanti has links here. I'm double checking. No, I suck, apparently. I didn't even say featuring Vishanti when I made this one. I'm sorry, Vishanti.
How dare you, sir?
All right. Well, now it says featuring Vishanti, and I will try to remember to go get more specific links. But if you go over to her channel, she also has her links there. So we both have Patreons. We both have what is it? Amazon wish lists if you want to get us some stuff there. All of that helps to go support the channel, whether it be through just financially making sure that I can do things like pay the bills and buy the booze for the shows, or whether it be in terms of like, hey, sometimes I get things like a little bit of burnout or just
Yeah.
the world being on fire, bringing me down a little bit, man. And every once in a while, when something arrives from my Amazon wish list, I feel better about all of that for hours, if not days. So
Dopamine.
it's real. Tad for $5 says pizza for Vish. AIG is a sack of sausages with a Godzilla. All of that is
Yay.
amazingly true. Take a drink. John Hopkins, who is not named after the hospital because it has a different name, says pizza is good for $5.
Indeed.
And then Josh McGee's for $5 says an assistant to Olivia Williams for the pizza. Thank you very much.
Nice. Pizza chop.
Yeah, that's another thing is we might be getting a short video of Vishanti speaking some Klingon if she gets pizza. Not a promise, the
Your
possibility.
chat went over to that guy's channel and just mobbed the comments.
Wait, which guy?
The Jisha.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah,
guy.
yeah. I love that. In case you guys don't know,
Okay.
that comes from a channel, Deshtu Jack. Or no, Jack Deshtu, because that actually makes sense. Which means Deshtu speaks, and Deshtu is the name he's adopted for use in Klingon. And the channel's all in Klingon, right? And so one of my favorite videos that he has is a video where he's just chatting about getting a sardine pizza. Or no, anchovy, sorry. An anchovy
But the
pizza.
way he opens it is just
yeah.
from top to bottom. It's
He's-
just great.
He's just got so much enthusiasm. It doesn't matter that you
Yeah.
can't understand the Klingon. You get what he's talking about. You get it.
You understand.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Also, Kip says he once said John Hopkins in a stream once. Ugh.
Or was he talking about John Hopkins, though? Because, I mean, he's in chat, so maybe he was just talking about the actual John Hopkins here.
Just if anybody doesn't know, the university or the medical institution is Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
Just letting y'all know.
Ann Stevens for £2 says, pizza, thumbs up, and that's true. Pizza is pretty great.
Yummy.
All right, well, now we only need 14 super chats to get Vishanti some
Hey,
pizza.
yo.
All right. A genetic connection with the Australian Aborigines to some Dravidians, maybe through Seba, and this would explain the connection to African Kush. Okay. No, Bodie. To here, I'm like, all right, if you want to claim that there's a genetic connection between, Dravidians to Australian natives, okay, yeah, sure, that's probably true. This you can't get from there to there, Bodie. That's nope, you took it too far. Aborigines may be more recent than some other peoples in other parts of the world. Actually, we do know that that's the case. Australia is, in terms of when places were first settled by humans, Australia is one of the more recent ones. So at least especially in terms of major land masses. Sure, if you want to go to tiny islands like the Azores or Easter Island or something like that, then it's much more recent. But in terms of continent scale places, yeah, Australia was one of the last ones. Let's see. It's estimated that the Aborigine population in 1788 was only about 300,000 people on the whole continent and Tasmania. This is a very small percentage of the world's population estimates at the time. Are you going to mention the reason that it's so low, though, Bodie? Because it's not oh no, there's just not many people here. There were a whole lot of people being killed, Bodie. I mean, it's not like Australia was ever the most population-dense area, but if you're going to point out how low the population is of the native peoples there, it might behoove you to mention their wholesale slaughter at the hands of Europeans. I don't know. Just a thought. Languages can only help so much, though. Consider the United Kingdom and Ireland. They speak English because the Angles and Saxons brought that language to the island. Yet scholars have been able to trace Ashkenaz, Javan, Magog, Gomer, and Tubal to these small islands. Have they? Have they, Bodie?
What?
What's your citation for this, Bodie? The same trend sure...
Yvonne is literally Greece. This is not a question.
Yeah. And, I mean, Ashkenaz, okay, fair, because that's just, like, Hebrew for what we now call Germany, which is roughly where, like, English speakers ended up coming from, and when they entered into, Great Britain. But, like, that's the only one of these that makes even a lick of sense. The same trend surely happened in many places. Language families can help to a degree, but unless the exact history of migrations and genealogies are known, some big pieces of the puzzle may be missing. But, Bodhi, you haven't even established that the language families help at all, because all you've done is propose hypothetical connections between language families that don't have any known connections, and the only supporting evidence that you've given for this is it would be convenient for my literalist interpretations of Genesis 10 and 11. That's it. That's not a good reason, Bodhi. Alright, we got a roadblock coming in here. Lack of written history.
Okay. Alright.
Actually, you know what? I had to take a drink for that last one, because it was so stupid it kind of broke my brain a little bit. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
Oh, Depraved Ambiance in the chat says, I have a linguistics degree. I'm in pain. Actual linguist.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Is Bodhi talking about linguistic relationships through genetic relationships? It seems like yes, kind of. Because, like, okay. So we cannot create one-to-one correlations between language groups and genetics groups, right? Because people can learn whatever language as they're growing up, and languages can displace and such. There are some general trends, right? Like most of the people who are from places that historically have had Semitic languages as the dominant languages are like in Y chromosome haplogroup J. But like, you can't just say that therefore if you're in haplogroup J, you speak a Semitic language, and if you're someone with a Y chromosome who has haplotype J, that mean you speak a Semitic language. Like, neither one of those works. But there is a small correlation. And Bodhi is perfectly willing to let that be a much more important thing than it actually is on the ground. Medigiki Platypus Warlock for $5 says, I read this for y'all. A case on fracture of os penis and partial penectomy in raccoon in IJVS 10, I think it's volume 3, 2021. Splintering via catheter. Oh my god.
Splinting via catheter or something, AIG.
I am so sorry for that raccoon. Holy crap.
The wash bear did nothing
Taking
to
a drink.
that.
No, oh my goodness. What an absolute nightmare.
Roadblock, lack of written history. Oh, I'm about to get real heated. One roadblock with determining Native American heritage is the scarcity of a written language. Such languages were passed on orally, which has allowed for many changes.
Okay, hold on.
Word, which allowed for many changes.
Hold on.
Uh-huh.
So, acknowledging that sign language is not orally transmitted, but the act of signing is directly analogous to speech, so we're going to brush past that at this point, now that we've acknowledged that. That's just how languages are passed on, Bodhi. There is a reason why if you speak Tibetan, it is basically a toss-up as to how to spell any given word, right? Because Tibetan hasn't had a spelling reform, like, ever. So despite the fact that they have, like, what is ostensibly an abugida in the loosest of terms, it's basically just a bunch of random syllables that you have to memorize. It might as well be a logography at this point. Why is that?
Okay.
Because having a written language doesn't actually have a huge impact on how much your language changes in terms of actual oral speech. That's just not how this works.
Okay, even in written language, consider that the English of 1,000 years ago is hardly recognizable to the modern English speaker.
Excuse me, Bodhi, speak for yourself, my friend.
Right. Consider also that Australian English did not even exist 200 years ago. It's not a different language, it's just a dialect. The only real major differences are, like, loan words from the indigenous people and a twang.
Yeah, okay. Sure, Bodhi.
This is... Wow, okay. So, although the language family may help identify relationships of various tribes and nations, it still may not be enough to tie these language families directly back to an ancestor from Babel. Okay.
Ooh, okay, we're gonna get some Olmecs.
Oh yeah, when y'all said you wanted soapbox, you're about to get it. Because I'm about to get on that soapbox. Some rare cases may have a connection to Babel, though. The Olmec, who may have been the precursors to the Mayans, or were possibly conquered by them, did have an ancient written language that has not been entirely scroll the page down. Deciphered yet.
I just want to point out that being the precursors or being conquered by them are not mutually exclusive. It is entirely possible that Olmec cultural hegemony influenced Mayan culture, and then later on, after adopting all of these various aspects of Olmec culture, the Mayans went and conquered the people who were in fact the Olmecs. Like, that's not a contradiction there. That's perfectly fine. Like, for instance, in many ways, Etruscan culture and language was a precursor to Roman culture and language, and yet the Romans still conquered the Etruscans. Just wanted to point out there that, yeah.
What is the footnote for 18?
18. Also, I want to say, Alex Markle says bro doesn't know what a dialect is. It doesn't seem like it.
He does, of course not. Chris Herb's undeciphered script about.com. Wow.
Well, archaeology.about.com.
Citation. Don't care.
What the? Oh, I clicked on it like an idiot. I'm sorry, everybody.
Gosh, Dapper's a professional.
Wait, we were on page 189. Okay, I can get us there.
Justine says, I think Macy might recognize the word soapbox now. When Vishanti and Dapper started talking about soapboxes, she sat up all excited. That's because cats are haters, and they understand.
There, I got it back. But also, that's okay. Dapper's a professional, so I'll take a drink for it.
Also, people were asking about this footnote 17. Keep in mind that written language goes back to Adam.
Citation needed there, Bodie, and this citation
likely
isn't covered.
Okay, he says it's likely given supernaturally. Supernatural was likely.
I'm glad that
because
God gave
the
us
book
the
of the genealogy of Adam listed by Moses in Genesis 5. Oh my God. So, Toledote Adam proves that it's likely, like, supernaturally given. Alright,
I want to go through something after I read a couple super chats. So first, Joshua Geese for $5 says, for the footnote, but mostly for pizza. And then Jester for $5 says, well, it says Bodie, but I think it means Bodie. Cites the Bible for not mentioning large groups of Aboriginal cities anywhere in the text as perfect evidence for the bag of micro he shares with AIG. Was not expecting it to go quite in that direction, so thank you. I'll take a drink.
Could not have predicted how that one was in.
No, I was not expecting that to go there, but that's cool. I like it when I'm surprised. Well, depending on what the surprise is.
It says, I have no words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at written language, right? So we have a pretty good handle as to how written language has arisen in the world as we have it now. So it usually starts out with what's called proto-writing. Proto-writing is a way to encode some basic information, but you can't actually just fully encode a language, right? So in proto-writing, you can do things like make a receipt or have tax records, right? So you can usually get things like amounts and nouns are pretty easy. Sometimes people will have their own, like, quote-unquote signature. Oh, Bother's back again. Bother is very excited about this today. Okay, so, and this proto-writing is in every case we know of directly based on just drawing depictions of whatever it is that's being tallied or talked about, and then also having some kind of tally mark, right? So whether it be like you know how the tally marks in English usually work, where you do 4 vertical lines and then a diagonal line for 5, something similar to that. Not always exactly that, but the same basic idea. A very simple way to keep track of whatever the number is. Okay. Then as, you know, the needs of people who need records becomes more and more complex, as you have a more complex taxation system, or your economy starts shifting from gift or barter towards a money system, and so that requires you to be able to, like, track commensurate values across different items, things like that. That starts to both develop in terms of what words can be represented, and also the symbols start to become more abstracted to make them quicker to draw and easier to keep track of, right? So instead of actually drawing out a full horse, you can see in, say, like, the Chinese script, Originally, our oldest inscriptions in Chinese, the pictures of horses look a whole lot like a horse, but eventually they get simplified to like 4 or 5 strokes, or 4 or 5 lines if you're carving, right? And then those start to become sort of stereotyped. And so we can actually see the entire like trajectory here in Egyptian. Egyptian hieroglyphics descend from earlier proto-writing, of which we have some examples in the pre-dynastic period. We have some like pre-dynastic tombs and artifacts that have sort of a proto-writing approach to them. But by the time we get to actual hieroglyphics, we're still drawing out these shapes. But at the same time, other scripts are evolving, like hieratic, which starts out basically just being cursive hieroglyphics, but eventually it's simplified to the point where you can't just guess the symbol in hieratic from knowing the hieroglyphic for it, and vice versa. And then it goes to an even more simplified demotic script. And we also know that all of the world's extant alphabets come from one of two places. Either they descend from Egyptian hieroglyphics, which is most of them. That's the Greek alphabet, that's the English alphabet, or the Latin alphabet. That's the both the quote-unquote Paleo and the modern Hebrew alphabet. That's the Syriac alphabet. That's the Arabic alphabet. I don't know about the Ge'ez and the Amharic Abugida. I would have to double check on that, so I'm not sure there. But the other places,
we have an actual
basically,
linguist in the chat. They might know.
Yeah. Hey. Oh, now I'm forgetting what the name was. Who was my linguist who was in here?
Depraved ambiance.
Depraved ambiance. If you know the like the historical origin of the Abugida used for Amharic and Ge'ez, let me know, please, because I don't know.
Also, they said writing is made for 2 reasons: receipts and magic.
Yeah, magic is a big part. But the magic usually ends up coming a little bit later because you have to get to the idea that you can do more than just write down tallies and receipts. And so, like, we have a good historical grasp on where all of these things come from. So if we look back at, say, like Mayan writing, it's nakedly pictorial, right? You're drawing things like jaguars and lakes and people and parts of plants and things like that, right? So the question then becomes, okay, if God gave the idea of writing, why does it have this progression historically and archaeologically that is very consistent, where we start with basically just pictures of things in nature, and those pictures mean the thing that they picture, all the way to more abstract things like depicting sounds or syllables with individual symbols that no longer are obviously pictorial? What is it that God gave Adam? Did he give him ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics? Doesn't seem like it, since we know that Egyptian itself is a language developed from what Bodie thinks was an even earlier language that was spoken by people dispersing from Babel. Basically, he thinks that Proto-Afro-Asiatic speakers dispersed from Babel. So did they have writing? Then if they did, why does it correspond directly to Egyptian when we find our earliest writing in Egyptian? Similarly for Sumerian. It doesn't actually make sense once you realize that we know how writing starts. Like, it's not a big mystery how writing came about.
Linguist update. Depraved Ambience says, I do not know the origin of that Abugida. Sorry, but you were talking about alphabets anyway. Smiley face.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about language, well, scripts generally, right? Like, we mentioned, like, the Chinese logography, things like that. So, actually, I'm now not actually sure where, like, the Abugidas that descend from, like, Sanskrit. I'm not sure what the origin is for those either. But
Wilson
another
says, I just learned that Futhark is probably based on Old Italic scripts, so even Futhark runes are based on hieroglyphs.
No, it's true. Actually, if you look at Futhark, it's very obvious that many of the letters are just a Latin or Etruscan letter that's been adapted to be carved more easily, which is why it's all straight lines. So you can carve it easily.
Yeah.
Yep. So another big source of written scripts, though, is like modern invention by people who speak a language that does not currently have a script, but who are familiar with the idea of writing in the first place, right? So the Cherokee syllabary is very obviously based on the shape of Latin letters. But there's no correspondence between the shape of a character in the Cherokee syllabary that is very similar to a Latin letter and the sound of that Latin letter. That's because the guy who created the Cherokee syllabary was familiar with the idea of writing and the fact that these glyphs indicated sounds, but he didn't actually know how to read any Latin script language. So he just used those as the basis for a new script, which was just as arbitrary as the Latin alphabet is for us. And
It looks
so
like wingdings to us, because
it does a little
essentially,
bit. Yeah. But so the question then for Bodie is, okay, Bodie, where do you put God? What's the gap that you're going to shove God into here? Because I don't see any gap here. Like, I know that Bodie loves the God of the gaps. But where's the gap, Bodie? All right, we got a couple super chats. Gesture for $5 says, I kind of figured I was spelling Bodie wrong, and I thought about checking the spelling, but then I asked, what would Bodie do? And it felt right with the check mark.
Incredible.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Pillow Punk Half Dog Half Canine for $10 says, so if you're reading in a language that uses an object and come across a word you're unfamiliar with, how are you supposed to figure out what the vowel sound? We said vowel sounds, but I assume you mean vowel sounds are. Just ask someone and hope they know. That's one option. Sometimes, if it's a particularly uncommon word or it's the first time it's introduced in a text, if you're reading in an abjad that has a vowel pointing system like Hebrew or Arabic does, sometimes they'll actually point the word so that it's a little bit more obvious. Other times, yeah, you might just have to ask or look it up. So yeah, it's not always easy. Another thing though is a lot of abjads that use what are called matras lecciones, which is where you're using one of the characters that's fundamentally a consonant, but that are sometimes used as stand-ins for long vowels. A lot of times, when you're transcribing a foreign word into, like, say, Arabic or Hebrew, you'll overuse matras lecciones in order to give a hint as to the vocalization. So you'll use them in places where the language normally wouldn't actually use one of these, but you'll just do it anyway to help out with readers.
Yep.
So that's some of the strategies. And yeah, sometimes you just have to ask someone who knows. But then again, that's actually not that unusual. Like, I can't even count the number of times when I've heard someone speaking and say, that's a word you've only ever read. You've never actually heard someone say it. And my favorite example, of course, is sodium is the major cation.
Oh, no.
Which is another flat earther thing. And someone was trying to argue that that Antarctica was made of salt, which I don't know how that helps a flat Earth, but that was the argument, was that Antarctica is made of salt, and as a result, this guy was reading some, like, paper where they characterized halite deposits in Antarctica, which are in fact salt. But the sentence he was reading is sodium is the major cation in the halite deposits, and he just read it as cation, because this is a man who had never heard the word cation.
Yeah. And in terms of, like, English phonetics, that's not a bad guess.
No, it's really not. And he also said anion for anion. So that was fun.
But, like, technical terms, I can let that go, because I'm like, you would need to kind of be a specialist to know that stuff, but the things that kind of get me are words that are really used in more common parlance than that people haven't heard spoken out loud before. YouTubers are really notorious for that. Not naming names, but yeah, it's kind of like one of those mixed bags where my first instinct is to go, lol, you messed it up, but then my second thing is, actually, you read a lot, so that's good.
Yeah. Alex Markle says, my girlfriend phonetically pronounced lingerie until I corrected. That must have been awesome.
One time in high school, I was talking to a classmate of mine in drama class, and somebody mentioned the band Sepultura, and she had no idea what we were talking about. And eventually we realized why she didn't, because she had only ever pronounced that word Sepultura.
Oh. Joshua Geese for $5 says, cutting onions can make you cry.
Oh, God.
So there was also...
Oh, Depraved Ambiance says, obfuscating is the YouTube pronunciation.
Oh.
Is it?
I don't know. I would have to double check. Tollefson, though, says...
only ever said obfuscate, not obfuscate.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say obfuscate. But then again, what do I know? Tolixon says, are Egyptian hieroglyphics an abjad? They don't encode vowels, or does the use of complex symbols put it in another group? So it's a little bit complicated. So generally speaking, objects are supposed to have a pretty simple one character per phonemic consonant category. Whereas Egyptian doesn't. Egyptian will often encode multiple consonants within one character. So they're but also it does not encode vowels directly. Although later on, they did have a similar idea to like the Matres Lectionis, where like certain consonants that were encoded in symbols could stand in for certain vowels later on. But like the Middle Egyptian period, which is what's normally considered like the height of hieroglyphics or something, um, or maybe just the default that you learn. I don't know. It was a little complex because there's a lot of logograms that are in there, which are not part of Abjad. So, for instance, a lot of words, especially having to do with religious themes like the names of gods and things like that, were written logographically. And then a lot of times there would be a combination of phonetic characters which did not encode vowels, followed by a logogram called a determinative that would tell you what category of word the previous word was. So, yeah, it's the problem is there really isn't another script that really works like Egyptian does. And so I am not sure how it would be most readily classified because it does not really fit the definition of an abjad, but neither is it like primarily a logography. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it works somewhat similarly to Siberian cuneiform. There are some vague similarities to how the Chinese logography works, but it's not very similar. And it's only similar to how the Chinese logography works if you're speaking about Mandarin and how it is encoded in the Chinese logography.
Let me resume our reading.
Indeed.
That will require you scrolling the page down, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that we were... Yeah, okay.
Hey. He's talking about Olmec that hasn't been deciphered yet. And there's controversy at this stage as to whether this language is of African descent. No, there is no controversy.
I'm taking a drink.
There's literally none. Specifically West African, as some linguists are claiming. Those linguists are incorrect. The Olmec are not Africans. Stop it.
Literally, they made statues with broad noses. That's the entirety of the argument.
They have broad noses and big lips, which only Africans can have. Like, no.
It's not even true of Africans broadly.
No.
There are plenty of Africans that don't look like that, too.
It infuriates me when people see the Olmec heads and they're like, these are Africans. No, they aren't. There are people that still live in Central America right now who are indigenous that look just like the Olmec heads.
Mm-hmm. And who aren't from Africa, and they don't have any particularly African genetic markers.
It's so infuriating!
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If this claim is verified, which it won't be, then it has a Babel connection. No, it doesn't. Many in West Africa are descendants of Put, Noah's grandson through Ham, who settled along the coast, the northwest of the African continent, and spread around the coast. For example, the Moors of old in Mauritania, Morocco, and so on came from Put. These are just... Other of Ham's descendants also inhabited Africa, such as Kush, Ethiopia, Mitzrayim, Misr, Egypt, and Libya, and their descendants settled in other parts of Africa too. What we can learn is that there were several language families, which means that there were likely several family groups, or at least their descendants, that made it from Babel to North America. But without much written history over the past 4,000 years or so, researchers need other angles. Hey! Bodie! Why isn't there a lot of writing preserved in some of these places? Do you have an idea, maybe, as to why?
Well, that answer is going to...
he knows?
I don't actually know if he does know the degree to which Central American writing systems were, or just writings in general, were destroyed by primarily the Spanish. I don't think he knows. But then again... He is also, to be fair, referring to basically the Americas broadly, in which case those places lack writing or written records primarily because those people were not literate. So, but no, I don't think he knows.
My ancestry on my mom's side goes through Mexico. I get extremely angry that people try to go, oh, well, there's not a lot of culture and they didn't have this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you know what they did? They had a culture. They had a metropolitan area that had hundreds of thousands of people living in it. They had aviaries. They had running water. They built a freaking city in the middle of a lake. Okay?
A lake full
They
of
were-
astronaut.
That's right. And you know what? The Spanish were like, oh, this is all evil pagan nonsense. And they burned a whole shitload of writings.
Mhm.
And it's only because of like a few scattered manuscripts that were stolen and mailed back and then lost for a while. And people like Bernardo Sahagún that we even have like any real good documentation from that period.
Yep.
It pisses me off.
Yep.
And then we have to go on these ridiculous contrived adventures and side quests to try to redecipher languages that were exterminated and stamped out by a bunch of fucking colonizers.
Well, to be fair, the languages weren't exterminated or stamped out. They actually are
No,
still
the
around.
writings.
But yeah, the scripts are.
Yeah.
Although there are actually some like neo Mayan texts that are being written in Mayan hieroglyphics. That is a thing that has started to happen again.
That the Mexican government is going to officially start teaching Nahuatl classes.
Pretty cool.
So we're going to have even more than about 1 million speakers of Nahuatl. I'm excited.
Yep. As Depraved Ambient says, colonial racism is a hell of a drug.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
My favorite little side story there is the number of times that basically various Spanish conquistadors started treating villagers and whatnot horribly. And then like some monk would be like, hey guys, what are you doing? And they're like, we're spreading Christianity. And the monks are like, you sure about that? Because you can't spread Christianity if you slaughter an entire village. So like, what are you actually doing? And like, when the missionary monks are like, hey guys, maybe calm down. Yeah, you done fucked up.
I mean, there are so many contemporaneous records of like monks and traveling clergy with these guys going, wow, they're total pieces of shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to write it down and send it back, and I'm going to tell everybody how shitty they are.
Yeah, when early modern Catholic clergy are telling you to tone it down, ooh.
While an inquisition's going on?
Yeah. Like, my goodness. It's like when the Nazis tried to tell the Japanese to tone it down in Nanking. Like, oh, goodness.
Unit, was it 531, 731, what is it? What's the unit that was just incredibly depraved, but America was like, hey, you know what? You actually did some medical research. We'll take that.
Oh, like in like concentration camps?
No, I'm talking about Japan specifically.
Oh.
What is the name of the unit? It's something
I don't know.
31. Is it 531, 731, 931? In the chat, y'all know what I'm talking about. They'll get it.
Yeah. All right. Histories and mythologies. From here, evaluating the various oral
731.
histories.
Thank you, Rashina Keller.
All right, 731.
731.
From here, evaluating the various oral histories of native tribes and nations requires some discernment. Oh, does it? Sometimes there is a nugget of truth waiting to be rediscovered behind the accounts, even in some of the mythologies. In other words, let me translate this for you. The degree to which the mythologies and oral histories sound like the Bible is the degree to which there is a nugget of truth, according to Bodie. Because remember, Bodie isn't looking to these to corroborate a hypothesis that he is currently only tentatively accepting, right? He is starting with the firm conclusion, Genesis 10 and 11 are giving me a literal, accurate history of the history of humanity. And things are true by the degree to which they agree with me. Which means that since he's already just assuming his conclusion, even if he finds similarities in the oral histories or mythologies of other people, that doesn't actually mean anything. It's no longer actually evidence because he's not using it to confirm his hypothesis. He's not using it as evidence. He's using it as a rhetorical cudgel to convince other people. Oh, there's Mothra again. He's using it as a rhetorical cudgel to keep the people who already agree with him agreeing with him.
Yep.
Joshua Beast for $5 says, 1/2 for the F-bomb fund. Well, we get one free one, and I just dropped our free one.
I mean, I've dropped a couple.
Have you today?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice. All right. For example, in Norse and Germanic mythologies, which, by the way, some of our earliest Norse and Germanic mythologies were written post the advent of Christianity in continental Europe, which means that we actually don't know the degree to which they may or may not have been influenced by things like, Christian missionaries who would have been familiar with things like Genesis. There is a person named Woden. You sure it's a person, Bodie? You sure about that? Sure it's not, the chief god of the Germanic pantheon? Okay, whatever. And he happens to be found in post-flood genealogies that lead to many royal houses throughout Europe. Okay, so Bodie, you know that the god Odin is in multiple of the genealogies that go back to Adam that you take seriously. You know this. And you're still, earlier in the book, just gonna be like, yeah, no, it's fine to use these as sources for the actual genealogies. Bodie, no one in the world, none of them are descended from the German god Odin, just like no one is descended from Zeus. That's not a thing. You can't just say Zeus is just a guy. Don't worry about it. These are real genealogies. That doesn't work. It still doesn't work for Odin.
This is just the Christian version of ancient aliens.
Seriously, I'm taking a drink for a lot of these genealogies mention some dude. His name is Odin. Oh, it was probably real.
Also, yeah, the chats, they're reminding you that I dropped an F-bomb in the first 5 minutes because I was talking about the GM Truth, the FODY.
Oh, well, in that case...
And
Josh...
Jake Nelson says you're so used to me dropping F-bombs, you don't even notice them anymore.
Vinny Marchenko says, but Thor Odinson? Okay, he's the one exception. He is, in fact, the son of Odin.
Correct. Which
is also sort of why I did not really like it when, what's-her-name became, quote-unquote, Thor. Because that's just a guy's name, right? It'd be like if I had, a friend who was a superhero and his name was Eric.
When Odin... Well, if you recall, in the first film, when Odin is putting the magic on Mjolnir, he says, whosoever possesses hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. So that made it seem like it's a title or an office or something that you can become if you're worthy.
I see, I disagree, right? Because if someone said, you'll have the power of Dapper, that would just mean that you're not me, but now you're, good at debunking creationists, and you have the power of Dapper. That still works as a personal name for me. And
it doesn't make sense, though, if you want to say, hey, person who's named Thor, if you're worthy of this hammer, you'll have your power. What?
Yeah. Because the power is
a title. Yeah, and it's like that pretty throughout, the Marvel mythology, so...
Yeah, I can't agree. I feel like Thor is just his name. Especially since when he doesn't have the power,
it's his name, but it's also a title. And yes, thank you, Olivia Williams. Donald Blake mentioned. And
that was for $2 Canadian, or as I like to call them, beaver bucks. Because of the long history of using beaver pelts for exchange in Canada. All right.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I think we can agree to disagree on. I don't need to be... I don't need you to agree with me on this. And I'm probably not going to agree with you on this, that I think it's silly that you would just call someone else Thor. But you know what?
Doesn't bother me.
That's fine. It doesn't need to. John Hopkins, for $5, says, the other half of the F-bomb fun for Joshua Geese, and then Joshua Geese immediately after says, another attempt for 2 out of 2 of the F-bomb fun. So now I have a half an F-bomb ready to go. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness, that was wrong. That is not what just happened. I don't know how that happened, but that's Dapper's a professional, so we'll take a drink for it. Okay, here we go. In Greek and Roman mythologies, there are a few correlations to the biblical table of nations, such as Kronos or Saturn being Kittim, Kethimus under Javan. No, man, that's just you doing auditory pareidolia. You have to actually come up with an actual through line. In other cases, Kronos and Saturn are seen as Noah. By whom? How do you get from Noah to Kronos and Saturn? What? But obviously, there is a mix of attributes and attached to these so-called gods, and they become rather convoluted. But you can't... I mean, obviously you can, but, You're just saying things that don't make any sense, and you have no way to connect these things. They're just claims, Bodie. Come up with some reason for me to accept them. Regardless, mythologies have often have a remnant of truth in them, but the stories are embellished.
This is literally just Christian ancient aliens.
Yep. Many Geeky Platypus Warlock for $5 says Vishanti deserves pizza, and Pegajace for $5 says pizza. Pizza. So let's try to update this again without it going all crazy. It worked. And
yeah, Depraved Ambiance in the chat is saying this is pain. Sorry,
it
linguists.
Yeah, Depraved Ambiance, the actual linguist. I am sorry. It's all, the whole book is like this, by the way. It's just Bodie saying random crap to connect various cultures that don't have a connection there. And almost always his excuse is, well, it kind of sounds similar. Like, okay.
Nah.
Cool. Dutch Mammoth never
Edward Helton in the chat says, is this the long-awaited AIG Spirit Science crossover episode?
Oh my goodness. Oh, they would probably hate each other, you know. That's the thing. Despite the fact that they're almost indistinguishable in terms of like their like rigor and the nonsense that they'll believe just because it sounds cool, they would absolutely hate each other.
Yep.
And of course, there's also the spirit science guy is an admitted grapist, but take that G out.
Yep.
So it's one thing to be an alleged rapist. It's another thing to be an admitted rapist.
Yep.
Yeah, those are not the same thing. Dutch Mammoths Never Saw Snow Tunicate for $5 says, Japan committed unbelievable horrors to my Korean ancestors in World War II, and I had to learn that on my own, thanks to the US. Also, pizza with a Godzilla. Yeah, I had to learn that. Like I said, I didn't have to learn it, but I learned a lot about it on my first trip to South Korea. Which is, by the way, one of the reasons that I am following the Johnny Somali case over in South Korea, in case you guys don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a bit of a tangent. Johnny Somali is an American nuisance streamer who has been kicked out of Japan and Israel and is currently unable to leave South Korea because of a travel ban. They took his passport, and then he went to the US consulate and got an emergency passport, which didn't help because he's under a travel ban. So it doesn't actually matter if he has a passport physically or not. They're not going to let him out. But basically, he's been charged 2 times under the Minor Crimes Act, which is basically the Korean version of felony. Well, South Korean version of felonies. Also, Roshan Schwarzschild Radio Star Color for $4.99 says, Noah, like Kronos, controls time and gifts. Yes. And Mothra is here again. What is happening with Mothra today? So,
she's angry. She has a lot to say.
I know. And he's also been charged twice under the crime of obstructing business, which basically means going into some business and making a nuisance of yourself to the point that they can't reasonably conduct business anymore. So, he recently pled, and by recently I mean like this morning, my time, he pled guilty to 3 of those charges and is awaiting trial on the other one. But here's the thing, the ones he's already pled guilty to, that could come up to like 1 to 5 years of prison time in South Korea. But the thing is that he's got another charge, and now he'll have that charge with a criminal history, with previous convictions. And in South Korea, one of the biggest determinatives for how bad your sentence is whether or not you have prior convictions, which now he does. And also, it looks like the police are waiting until numerous of his current cases are done before they charge him with an Obscenities Act crime for producing sexualized deepfakes with other streamers who did not consent to any of this. Which, if you just make deepfakes in South Korea, that's already punishable. If they are sexual in nature, the penalties go way up. So I am just hoping that this guy, who, by the way, disrespected the sex slaves of South Korea that were, put into sexual slavery by the Japanese occupying forces as quote-unquote comfort girls. Yeah, he decided to twerk and basically harass the statue commemorating them in Seoul. And so I'm like, this guy, you can just toss away the key. I don't need him back in the United States. If y'all want to
Yeah.
just put him in a
Also-
dark hole in some prison in South Korea, fine by me. Because you know what? I have a bit of a
Cat
soft spot for
T.
South Korea.
Is saying, hey, Mothra's celebrating Women's Day.
That's true. It is International Women's Day. And so, happy International Women's Day to all my non-American women viewing. If you're in America, you're not international, so it doesn't count. Sorry, Vishanti.
Aw.
Yeah, you're not international. But if you go on to a stream where someone is streaming who isn't from America, then you are international for that person. So, for them, it is you day. Because for them, you'd be an international woman. That's how it works
Hey,
now.
Kip, you should leave the conference and kick up a live stream real quick.
Yeah, then have Vishanti on. She can be your international woman. We should have had Chesh on. She counts as an international woman. For
That's
me,
true.
not for Kip, though. Roshan Sports Child Radio Star Keller for $4.99 says Japan just wanted Johnny Somali gone, so they deported him ASAP. And I mean, I can't blame them. And now they have some signs in their subway systems that say like Japan is not a theme park with like a no over someone like breakdancing, but the person breakdancing is very clearly just Johnny Somali, complete with dark skin and the haircut that he had while he was there. It's just like, oh man.
Mm-hmm.
You disrupted Japan so much they created a new stick figure just for you.
Ugh. I was gonna say, Claude Simeon asks, so if Kip were here, would Vish be international? No, because it's Dapper stream. If Kip had his own stream,
yeah, Kip would be an international man,
which
and Vishanti would be a national woman.
produce his live streams. So
Fake legal Vishanti, international woman of mystery.
that's right.
Jessica Bell says Dapper the pedant. It's true.
I can be a pedant too. I will always argue that it's not pled, it's pleaded.
I did say pled, and I was wrong about that, and Vishanti is right. I admit to this fault. And also, by the way, that Roach and Schwarzschild Radio Star Keller just got us our 30th super chat, which means guess who's getting some pizza?
Woohoo!
Not Bent, but Vishanti. I think we're about halfway to getting Bent pizza, which means we're probably not doing it. All right, let's see if we can get through this bit here. This will be an exciting area for study for Native Americans to evaluate their historical traditions and pick out the nuggets of truth in them. Alright, I only have a half an F-bomb, but you know what, Bodie? Fuck you. You don't get to tell Native Americans which parts of their traditions are worth anything based on how much they look like Genesis 10. Go die in a fire, Bodie.
An asshole.
Jeez. You imagine going up to people and being like, oh, hey, your closely held cultural traditions that are a big part of your currently and historically horribly oppressed group. Some of them are actually pretty cool because they agree with me, a member of the group that is doing the oppressing of you and that has been erasing your culture.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't know what that feels like at all.
Jeez. You know what? I'm not reading the rest of the section. That has pissed me off. We'll start back up with the next chapter. We're Noah's 3 sons triplets, because apparently that's a thing that's important to know about. Oh my goodness, Regios just gave 20 Dapper Dinosaur memberships.
Oh, dang!
Wow, that puts us most of the way towards...
Reggio's making it rain!
Thank you. I will try to take 20 drinks. Vishanti, while I try to take 20 drinks, why don't you go off on your soapbox about how shitty it is what Bodie just did, because I feel like you've got a great soapbox on that one.
In fact, I do. And, hang on a second. Let me get the Cheeto dust off my fingers. I was like, hang on, I'm teeing up a soapbox. Let me get all the Cheeto dust off.
That was 10.
Okay.
Right there.
Bodhi's carrying on the fine Christian evangelical tradition of cultural erasure. Because in his mind, his tradition's the truth. And if yours matches his, you can keep those parts. Everything else, throw them out. They're evil and satanic. That is cultural genocide. And if you do that, you suck.
Absolutely. Look, here's one of the things, right? Cultural traditions like origin myths and such aren't primarily valued because they're literally true. That's not the point, right?
That is such a preposterous, like, Western philosophical BS metric. Is it true
Right.
or not, that does not apply to
Ah,
people's mytho-history and their legends and that does not apply. We don't carry on our traditions based on whether or not they're, quote, true, TM. Like, I get really freaking upset with Western people who live under Christian hegemonies going, well, your thing says this, and that's not true, so it's worthless. Suck my ass.
and look, here's
That's
the
not
thing,
what we use it for.
right? There are circumstances in which the question, like, is this historically true, is an interesting and important question to ask. But this is just not one of them.
If you are a historian doing history,
Right.
if you are an archaeologist doing archaeology,
Right.
those can be metrics you use.
Exactly.
But if you're somebody practicing their own traditions, we don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, we got a
That's
couple
like
more.
asking, is yellow true? What?
Metageeky Platypus Warlock for $2 says, identical triplets? Even better for genetics. Yeah, I'm hoping he's not saying that they were identical, because, like... Oh, no, he is saying identical. Inherited the same genetic information. Oh, God, Bodie, don't make your problems worse. Then
But also... no, go ahead.
Roshan Schwarzschild Radio Star Color for $4.99 says, oh, God, Johnny Somali is from Phoenix. I apologize on behalf of my people. Yeah, I super don't want him back in Arizona.
No.
Dude, okay. I want that guy to be in prison long enough that he forgets most of English and can only speak, like, whatever the prison dialect of Korean is. And then he can come back to Arizona and go through all sorts of weird culture shock where he's not even used to being out of prison and he's now in a new linguistic scenario after, like, decades of rotting away in a South Korean prison. Which, by the way, for all I know, South Korean prisons are wonderful. I don't actually know.
I at least want to read the first, like, couple of... Let me just read this before we start wrapping it. Were Noah's 3 sons triplets? Why do people look so different? If Noah's 3 sons were triplets and all inherited the same genetic information, who said they were triplets? The Bible indicates Noah had 3 sons prior to the flood, okay, but many people who mistakenly think they were triplets and hence may have looked identical.
I've never heard that.
Who thinks that?
I've never heard anyone say that.
Who thinks that? Because he had 3 sons doesn't mean they were triplets. What? Who thinks this?
Tad for $2 says, is yellow true? And the answer is yes. Yellow is true. Claude Sabine says Johnny Somali in Squid Games. Well, first, I mean, if there were real Squid Games, I would say no. I don't think what he's done is worth a death sentence. Like, he hasn't killed anyone.
Also, another point of pedantry. It's Squid Game.
But see, this
the
would
name
be...
of the show is Squid Game.
This would be a second version of the Squid Game, so now there's 2 of them, so now we can have games.
Hey, people come here for not a linguistics and pedantry, and this is what I will deliver.
All right. Well, we did not quite get to Bent Gets Pizza, so Bent is going to have to starve. Except, actually, he's been getting a lot of stuff from his wish list that includes a lot of food. So he'll actually just have to eat stuff from his wish list. Oh, yeah. He's had, let's see. He's had Lucky Charm treats come in, which were like Rice Krispies treats, but with Lucky Charms.
Oh, yeah.
Cream of wheat. Yeah. Which, fun fact, cream of wheat is called cream of wheat because they don't want to call it gruel. He's had grits come in. He's instant grits, instant oatmeal, instant cream of wheat. He's had refried beans. He has like 24 refried bean cans. He's had ravioli come in. Granola bars, lots of granola bars. Snack packs that are just full of like individually packed, like single serving chips and other snacks, like chips, Cheetos, stuff like that.
Yummy.
There's a whole section of the room where his computer is that's just taken up with various foodstuffs that have come in and don't currently fit in the kitchen.
Cream of wheat is just grits with sugar.
No, it's gruel.
It's grits with sugar. That's what cream of wheat is.
But it's made of wheat, not corn.
I have spoken.
All right. So for the pedants out there, it's actually gruel with sugar. Joshua Geese for $5 says Noah's triplets was really was the real inspiration for my 3 sons. All right, so let's update this, and then we're going to start wrapping up. Vishanti, do you have anything that you want people to know about that you're going to be up to in the next week or two?
Coming soon, Chrissy Hansen and I are going to be doing some team ups on my channel to talk about various anti-Semitic tropes, some history stuff, and we're going to try to give people the information they need to combat anti-Semitism wherever they see it on the internet, because not everyone's familiar with all the different dog whistles and things like
Yeah.
that. So that'll be coming soon. And then the week after that, Kip and I are going to be doing a stream. He's going to be hosting this guy who has a channel called Christianity on the Spectrum, where he talks about the study that he did that kind of analyzes the overlap between people who leave Christianity or deconvert or deconstruct and people on the spectrum.
Awesome.
And he himself, this person, remains Christian, but he's on the spectrum and he discusses it. It is fascinating.
That does sound actually really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so is that all you got?
Yep.
Okay, so on this channel, let's see. So on Tuesday, we've got another Kent with Bent. This one I will not be in my human suit, so I will just be I'll be able to actually relax and be in my real skin, if you will. So that'll be fun. It'll actually be at 6 Pacific. So, because remember, everybody, clocks are changing tomorrow morning. And by tomorrow morning, I mean like tonight/tomorrow morning in dark 30 times. So, change your clocks if they're manual. So probably like, I don't know, like your microwave and your oven, your cell phone will do it automatically.
Yep. The tradition, just change them before you go to bed.
Yep, basically. So let's see. Then on Thursday, I will be premiering the third and final section of the Randy Galuza series, which is called, if I remember correctly, Mighty Morphin Road Beetles. So in this one, Randy is going to claim that if certain beetles are around ants, they'll undergo a radical transformation to look like the ants as adults.
Oh.
Which isn't even close to true. That's just completely wrong. And the paper he cites in support of this says absolutely nothing of the kind. It flatly contradicts that interpretation. So, yeah, it's kind of wild. That's going to be Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday, I am hoping that we can get some more character art from... oh, wait, no, I think actually on Friday, we're actually playing the Alien TTRPG on my Top Hat Soft channel. Yeah, so that should be... Zerolon will be there. I think It's Rubik's is going to be there. I believe Manya is going to be there, and a few others. I think Tirirana.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna play through Chariot of the Gods. I'm not sure if it's Chariots or Chariot. I don't remember. Which is the first of the cinematic the cinematic trilogy that they published, as sort of their intro to the game. A lot of people will still be learning the rules, so you'll be learning with us. I hear there might even be a secret android. So you can guess as to who the secret android is with their own separate list of agenda items that, might be in conflict with some of the human crews. And we're not sure who it's going to be, so there's going to be a little bit of paranoia built in that way. It's a fun game. I played the Alien RPG at least once, and it was a lot of fun. And in fact, the first time I played it, I was a secret android, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
Neat.
Yeah. I actually managed to get pretty much everyone to go along with my agenda by, scaring them about what would happen if Wayland Yutani got their hands on whatever was going on. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, so we won't go to them. And I was like, well, that was my agenda the whole time. I didn't even have to reveal that I'm a robot. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun game. And so, yeah, we're all going to be learning how to play it. It's not a very complex game, though. It's mostly like roll d6s. Did you roll a 6? Well, then you succeed. So that's
I like what Team O&B says, plot twist, oops, all androids.
That would be a fun plot twist for literally all androids and none of us know.
Yes. That's something I would do.
Tad says, how is the secret android picked? Usually what happens is the GM has a deck of cards or something similar, and they'll shuffle that and deal them, and each one has some kind of objective that you have for the cinematic episode. and one of them is just you're actually the android, and here are how you play as the secret android. And basically the way it works is you just use the regular rules for a human until it's revealed that you're an android, and then you start using the android rules.
Neat.
Yeah, it really is a fun system. Let's see. So then on Saturday, we should be back, and hopefully Kip will unabandon us. So hopefully he'll be back. We'll
He'll
continue.
just band.
Yeah,
He'll band us.
He'll band us. And then
This is our fake etymology. Band together came from abandoned. That's
yes.
the opposite.
Wonderful folk etymology there.
Cursed etymologies.
Yeah, we'll continue on with Worth Noah's three sons triplets, which I've literally never heard of anyone saying they were, but hey, it'll be interesting. And then yeah, that's what's coming up in the next week or so. By the way, if you are interested in the next Star Trek actual play that's coming out on Top Hats Off, that's going to be Star Trek Endurance. We are close to being able to play that, but I have also told Craig that I don't want to start it until he's ready to stream in his new location.
Yeah.
Because in case you guys don't know, Craig has had to move because storm damaged his roof. So his old flat just is missing part of its roof. So the council is like, nah, man, you gotta move. So he's in the process of doing all that. So I've told him, like, hey, man, until that's figured out, I'm not going to try to pressure you into playing this game. So in the meantime, though, we have all sorts of, like, one-shot ideas, character art streams, stuff like that. So do stay tuned over on Top Hats Off. We're going to keep doing some cool stuff over there. And also, any memberships there, that goes to continuing to support future and present games with things like additional supplements for the games, and stuff like that. That's primarily not just going into my bank account so I can buy myself pizza. That's mostly going towards furthering the actual costs of playing those games and running those games. In case you don't know, game masters spend virtually all the money that is ever spent on TTRPGs, and that's usually me. So, with that though, I want to say thank you so much to everybody. We didn't quite get to the bent pizza part section, but we got well past the Vishanti gets pizza. And
yay, no starve.
Yeah, Vishanti won't starve today. Maybe tomorrow. All right, stay safe out there. Make sure you guys get things like a bug-out bag and a passport. Not maybe a passport, definitely a passport, because you never know when it might be necessary to flee. We'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody. Come by the Discord if you want Power Rangers. We'll be doing that later.
Watch the new Daredevil.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Van Tovend, Furgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Strawberry Vein, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.